The council chamber stretched wide like an arena, filled with beings from 100 different worlds. Captain Jake stood in the center, his hands bound with energy restraints that hummed against his skin. Around him stood 299 other humans, all waiting for judgment. Above them, the council speaker raised 6 of its tentacled arms. The creature's voice echoed through translation devices that made every word sound cold and final. "Humanity has proven itself too dangerous for civilized space," the speaker announced. "Your species starts conflicts. You refuse to follow proper protocols. You are aggressive and unpredictable." Jake wanted to argue. The incident they referenced was hardly humanity's fault. A trade dispute had escalated when a merchant tried to cheat human colonists out of their harvest. When the humans protested, they called it an act of war. Now all of humanity faced punishment for one angry farmer throwing a punch. "We have decided on exile," the speaker continued. "You will be sent to VII, a Class-0. There you will live out your remaining days." Murmurs rippled through the human prisoners. Dr. Lisa Hammond, standing near Jake, went pale. She knew what Class-0 meant. She had studied xenobiology for 15 years. Class-0 worlds were nightmare planets where even the strongest species died within weeks. "That's a death sentence," Lisa whispered. The speaker heard her. "It is mercy. We could execute you here. Instead, we give you a chance at life. If you can survive VII, you earn your freedom." Jake looked at the faces around him, families huddled together. Ben Carter, the engineer, held his daughter close. Commander Price stood rigid, her military training keeping her calm. These were good people. Farmers, scientists, builders, and families who wanted nothing more than to live in peace. "How long has anyone survived there?" Jake called out. The chamber fell silent. Finally, a small council member clicked its mandibles. "The longest survival was 6 standard cycles, 23 days in your measurement." 23 days? Jake felt his stomach drop. "You have 1 rotation to prepare," the speaker said. "Then you depart." The transport ship was old and barely functional. The humans crowded into cargo holds designed for freight, not people. They had been given basic supplies: water purification units, temporary shelters, emergency rations for 30 days, and simple tools. No weapons, no advanced technology, nothing that could help them fight back. Lisa worked through the limited data they had on VII during the journey. What she found made her hands shake. "The gravity is 2.3 times Earth standard," she told Jake, and as they huddled around a small data screen. "The atmosphere requires constant filtration. The oxygen content is breathable, but there are trace toxins that will build up in our lungs over time." "What about the wildlife?" asked. Lisa pulled up grainy images taken by orbital sensors. Massive creatures moved through dense jungles. "Everything there is a predator. The plant life is carnivorous. The smallest confirmed predator weighs 300 pounds. The largest—" She trailed off, pointing at a shadow in one image that seemed the size of a building. Ben Carter leaned over their shoulders. "We can adapt. Humans always adapt." "Not to this," Lisa said quietly. "This planet was rated Class-0 for a reason. It's designed to kill." The landing was rough. The transport ship dropped them in pods, scattering the 300 humans across a rocky clearing near a river. Jake's pod hit the ground hard enough to rattle his teeth. The gravity grabbed him the moment he released his harness, pulling him down with crushing force. He climbed out slowly, every movement exhausting. Around him, others emerged from their pods, struggling under the oppressive weight. Some fell to their knees. Parents carried children who couldn't walk under the heavy gravity. The air hit him next. Thick and humid, it smelled like rot and chemicals. His emergency mask filtered the worst of it, but he could still taste the poison on his tongue. "Everyone to the center," shouted. "Form up, we need a perimeter." They gathered in the clearing as the sun began to set. That's when they heard the first sounds. Roars echoed from the jungle around them. Things moved in the shadows between massive trees. The ground shook with heavy footsteps. Ben worked quickly to activate their portable shelters. The structures unfolded into basic domes that could fit 10 people each. They had 30 shelters total. Not enough privacy, but enough to keep everyone out of the elements. "We need light," Jake said, "and weapons, anything we can use." The colonists scrambled to gather materials. They broke down the landing pods, salvaging metal struts and sharp edges. Tors, a former Marine, organized teams to fashion crude spears from pod debris and local wood. As darkness fell completely, the sounds from the jungle grew louder. Eyes reflected in their portable lights. Green eyes, yellow eyes, eyes that glowed red. Dozens of them circling the camp. "They're hunting us," Lisa said. She held a metal rod like a club, her scientific mind cataloging every detail of the creatures she could barely see. "They're testing us, learning our patterns." Maya, their agricultural specialist, had been examining the ground near the river. She ran back to camp, her face frightened. "There are bones near the water, human bones, and there's something carved into a rock." Jake followed her to the riverbank. In the dim light, he could see what she meant. Weathered bones, definitely human, lay scattered near the water's edge. And on a large stone, someone had scratched words into the surface with desperate strokes. "They are watching, they want you to fail." Jake stared at the message. Another group of humans had been here before. They had died, but before they died, they had left a warning. A roar split the night. Something massive crashed through the jungle toward their camp. The humans grabbed their makeshift weapons and formed a circle around the shelters where the children hid. The creature that emerged from the darkness stood 12 feet tall. Its body was covered in scales like armor. 6 eyes focused on the humans. Its mouth opened to reveal rows of teeth designed for tearing flesh. "Hold the line," commanded. The creature charged, threw his spear first. The weapon bounced off the creature's scales harmlessly. Others threw their spears with the same result. The creature crashed into their circle, scattering humans like leaves. But humans didn't break easily. Jake rolled under the creature's snapping jaws and drove his metal rod into the soft flesh under its chin. The creature screamed. Ben appeared on its other side, jamming a piece of sharp metal into its eye. Lisa, despite her fear, ran forward with a burning branch from their fire and thrust it into the creature's mouth. The beast thrashed and retreated, bleeding and burned. The humans didn't celebrate. They knew this was just the first attack of many. As the night wore on, more creatures came. Each time the humans fought them off. They learned quickly. They adapted. When one tactic failed, they tried another. When weapons broke, they made new ones. By dawn, 20 creatures lay dead around their camp. 7 humans had been wounded. 2 had died. Jake stood at the edge of the clearing as the sun rose, his body aching from the gravity and the fighting. Around him, exhausted colonists tended wounds and reinforced their defenses. Approached him, blood on her torn uniform. "We survived the night." "One night," Jake said. "We need to survive thousands more." "Then we will," said firmly, "because we're human and humans don't know how to quit." In orbit above, the council observers watched their screens in silence. The humans should have been killed in the first hour. Instead, they had fought back. They had survived. One observer turned to another. "Perhaps we made a mistake sending them here." "Too late now," the other replied. "We watch and wait. They'll die soon enough. They always do." But on the planet below, Jake looked at his people and saw something the council didn't. 3 weeks had passed since the landing. The human camp now looked like a fortress instead of a desperate huddle of shelters. Walls made from salvaged pod metal and local stone surrounded the clearing. Watchtowers rose at each corner, manned day and night by rotating guards. Jake walked through the camp in the early morning, his body finally adjusting to the crushing gravity. His legs were stronger now. Everyone's were. The children who couldn't walk on the first day now ran and played between the shelters. The human body was remarkable at adaptation when survival depended on it. Ben Carter worked at his makeshift workshop near the eastern wall. The engineer had transformed the wreckage of their landing pods into useful tools. Water filtration systems now operated at double efficiency. Their air masks had been modified to handle longer periods in the toxic atmosphere. "Morning, Captain," Ben said without looking up from his work. He was building something new, a device with spinning parts and coiled wire. "What's that?" Jake asked. "Generator," Ben replied. "I pulled the power cells from 3 pods and linked them together. If this works, we'll have electricity for lights and tools, maybe even enough to power a communication array." "Can we reach Earth?" Ben shook his head. "Not from ground level, but we might be able to send signals to ships passing through this sector, if anyone's listening." Jake nodded and moved on. Near the southern edge of camp, Maya tended to rows of plants growing in modified soil beds. The agricultural specialist had worked miracles with the limited seeds they carried and the hostile local soil. "The earth crops are taking root," Maya reported, wiping sweat from her face. The local soil is actually rich in nutrients once you filter out the acid compounds. These tomatoes should be ready for harvest in another week. She pointed to a separate bed where strange local plants grew. I'm also experimenting with the native flora. Some of it might be edible if processed correctly. We can't rely on our earth food supplies forever. Jake smiled. You're doing great work, Maya. Just trying to make sure we don't starve, she replied, though I'm more worried about what's eating us than what we're eating. Her concern was valid. The predators came every night without fail. The humans had gotten better at fighting them off, but the attacks were relentless. Tors had transformed into an effective security chief, training every able-bodied human in basic combat techniques. Jake found drilling a group of colonists near the western wall. The former Marine barked orders as people practiced with spears and clubs. Lower your stance, the gravity helps you here, use your weight as a weapon, shouted. When that beast charges, you plant your feet and drive upward, aim for the soft spots, eyes, throat, belly. The colonists followed his instructions, their movements becoming more confident with each drill. They had learned that on VII, everyone had to be a fighter. There were no civilians in survival. Price approached Jake, carrying a rolled map. We've scouted 3 miles in every direction, she said, spreading the map on a flat rock. The jungle to the north is too dense for safe travel. The mountains to the east are filled with cave systems, but we've heard large creatures moving in them. She pointed to the south. The river leads to a valley about 5 miles downstream. The terrain there is more open, less places for predators to hide. What do you recommend? Jake asked. We should establish a secondary camp at the valley, said. Give us a fallback position if this camp is ever overrun. Also, the valley has better visibility. We could see attacks coming. Jake studied the map. That's a long distance to travel in this gravity. We're getting stronger every day, replied. A month ago, walking a mile seemed impossible. Now we're running patrols of 3 miles. Our bodies are adapting. It was true. The humans were changing. Their muscles had grown denser under the constant pressure of high gravity. Their lungs processed the filtered air more efficiently. Even their reaction times had improved from fighting nightly predator attacks. Lisa Hammond spent her days studying the local ecosystem. Her shelter had become a makeshift laboratory filled with samples of plants, insects, and tissue from the creatures they killed. She looked up from her microscope when Jake entered. I've made an interesting discovery, Lisa said, excitement in her voice. Earth prepared us for this place better than we realized. She pulled up images on a salvaged data pad. Look at these predators. They're massive and powerful, but they're slow. Their evolution on a high-gravity world made them strong but reduced their agility. Meanwhile, humans evolved on a moderate gravity world with persistence hunting. What does that mean? Jake asked. It means we're faster, Lisa explained. In a straight fight, they overpower us, but in a chase or a dodge, we have the advantage. That's why our hit-and-run tactics work so well. We're fighting smart, not strong. She pulled up another image. And look at this. The atmospheric toxins that poison other species. Humans evolved breathing polluted air in our industrial cities. Our lungs have experience filtering contaminants. It's not perfect, but it's giving us an edge. Jake felt a spark of hope. So we're actually suited for this place. Suited is too strong a word, Lisa cautioned. But we're less unsuited than other species. Earth was never an easy planet. Predators, diseases, environmental extremes, we evolved to handle challenges. This is just another challenge. That evening, organized a hunting party. They had learned that attacking predators before nightfall reduced the number that came to camp after dark. Jake joined the hunt along with 10 others, including a colonist named Mitchell who had proven to be an excellent tracker. They moved through the jungle in formation, weapons ready, led them to a den he had discovered 2 days earlier. Inside, a large predator slept during the day. The creature was 14 feet long with armored scales and claws like swords. Under normal circumstances, hunting such a beast would be suicide. But the humans had learned its patterns. They knew it slept deeply during daylight hours and was slow to wake. Gave the signal, 4 humans rushed in with spears while others hung back with burning torches. The predator woke with a roar, but the humans were ready. They struck at its eyes and throat, aiming for vulnerable spots. When it lunged, they scattered and regrouped, always moving, never staying still. The fight lasted 2 minutes. The predator died with 7 spears in its body. The humans had only minor scratches. "That's how you do it," said Breathing Hard. "Fast, coordinated, and smart. We're apex predators now." They dragged the carcass back to camp. Maya and her team would butcher it for meat. The hide would become leather for clothing and armor. The bones could be tools. Nothing went to waste in survival. That night the attacks came as always, but something was different. The predators seemed more cautious. They circled the camp but didn't charge blindly as they had before. They were learning that humans were dangerous prey. Jake stood on the watchtower, looking at the eyes glowing in the darkness beyond their walls. Behind him, the camp buzzed with activity. Ben's generator powered lights that kept the darkness at bay. Maya's crops grew despite the hostile world. Trained fighters stood ready at every wall. High above, invisible to human eyes, the council observers watched their screens with growing concern. "They've survived 22 days, one observer noted. "That matches the previous record." "They'll die tomorrow," another replied. "All species die by day 23, it's inevitable." But on day 23, the humans didn't die. They thrived. Ben completed his communication array. The device crackled to life, sending signals into space. They had no way to know if anyone would hear, but they were trying. Humans always tried. Maya harvested the first Earth tomatoes grown on VII. The crop was small, but it proved they could grow food. They wouldn't starve. Security teams reported that predator attacks had decreased by 30%. The creatures were learning to avoid the human camp. Natural selection was happening in real time, and humans were the selective pressure. Lisa discovered that certain local plants could be processed into medicine. Human bodies were adapting, yes, but medicine would help them adapt faster and safer. Jake stood before the colonists that evening, his voice carrying across the camp. 3 weeks ago, they dropped us here to die, he said. They called this place impossible. They said no one survives, but we're not dying. We're living, we're building, we're adapting. The colonists cheered. Their faces were leaner now, hardened by struggle but not defeated. They looked like survivors because that's what they had become. "We're going to do more than survive," Jake continued. "We're going to build a home here. We're going to prove that humans don't break. We bend, we adapt, we overcome." In orbit, the Council observers sent their report. Status: human colony still viable at day 23. Unprecedented. Recommend continued observation. The observer who sent the message felt something it had never felt while watching VII. It felt uncertain. Below, the humans of VII prepared for another night, but they did so with confidence now. They had learned the rhythms of their new world. They had turned a death sentence into a challenge. And humans loved challenges. Mitchell stood at the edge of camp on watch duty when he noticed something strange near the river. He took 3 others with him to investigate. What they found would change everything. Jake stood at the entrance to the tunnel with Lisa and Ben. They had brought portable lights that cast shadows on walls that were definitely not natural. Smooth metal panels lined the passage, covered in dust and corrosion, but still intact after what must have been centuries. "This is ancient," Lisa whispered, running her hand along the wall. "But it's also advanced. Look at these joints. This was built by people who understood engineering at a level beyond most current galactic species." Ben examined a panel that might have once been a control interface. Whatever this place was, it had power, lots of it. These conduits are thick enough to handle massive energy loads. "Could there be power left?" asked. "After this long, unlikely," Ben replied. "But the infrastructure might still be usable if we can get a power source down here." Jake made a decision. "We explore, but we move carefully. Take 3 people and map the first 50 meters. If it's safe, we go deeper." The tunnel descended at a gentle slope into the earth. The air was stale but breathable, which suggested the ventilation systems had been well designed. Every 20 meters, they found more evidence of sophisticated construction. Doorways sealed with heavy blast doors. Side passages branching off into darkness. Chambers that might have been control rooms or living quarters. His team returned after an hour. The tunnel opens into a large chamber about 200 meters down. The chamber is huge, has to be at least the size of our entire camp. And Captain, there's something you need to see. They descended together, the full exploration team now numbering 15 people. When they reached the chamber, Jake understood urgency. The room was a command center. Rows of dormant consoles lined curved walls that formed a circle around a central platform. Above the platform, a holographic display system hung dark and lifeless, but most striking was the writing. Symbols covered every surface, not random graffiti but careful documentation. Mathematical formulas mixed with star charts and what looked like biological diagrams. And in one corner, written in several languages including English, was a message. "To those who find this place," Jake read aloud. "You are not the first to be sent here. You will not be the last. VII is a test. The Council uses it to measure threats. If you die, you were never a threat. If you survive, they will kill you themselves. We learned this too late. The platforms in orbit are weapons. They are waiting. Trust nothing the Council tells you. Signed, the expedition, Day 41. The chamber fell silent as the words sank in. "It's a trap," said quietly. "They sent us here expecting us to die, and if we don't die naturally, they'll kill us." Lisa moved to one of the walls covered in star charts. I've read about them. They were a species that joined the Galactic Council 2,000 years ago. Advanced, peaceful, curious. Then they disappeared from all records about 300 years ago. The official story was they explored too far into dangerous space and were lost. "They were sent here," Jake said, understanding dawning, "just like us." Ben was examining the central platform. "If we can get power to this facility, we might be able to access their records, learn what they discovered before they died." "That's a big if," pointed out. "We barely have enough power for our own camp." "Then we build more," Ben said with determination. "Give me a week and the parts from 2 more landing pods. I'll get this place running." They returned to camp with their discovery. That night, Jake called a meeting of all the colonists. He told them everything, the truth about the test, the orbital weapons waiting above, the fate of the who had survived 41 days before being eliminated. The colonists reacted with anger and fear. Some demanded they surrender and plead for mercy. Others wanted to hide and hope the Council would forget about them, but most looked at Jake with determination in their eyes. "They want us to fail," said, standing up. "So we don't fail, simple as that." "It's not simple," someone argued. "They have weapons in orbit that can kill us all. What can we do against that?" Jake thought of the message carved in stone. "They are watching. They want you to fail." "Then we stop giving them what they want," Jake said. "We stop playing their game. We take control." Over the next week, Ben worked with a team to run power lines from the camp to the ancient facility. They stripped components from landing pods and Maya's experimental crops, sacrificing short-term comfort for long-term survival. The work was exhausting in the high gravity, but humans had grown strong here. Meanwhile, Sophie, their communications officer, had been studying the signals their array was receiving. She had been a signals analyst before exile, skilled at finding patterns in noise. What she discovered made her blood run cold. "Captain," Sophie said, pulling Jake aside, "I've been tracking orbital signals. There are 4 platforms up there positioned in geosynchronous orbit around our location. They're not satellites, they're weapons platforms." "How do you know?" "Because they're charging," Sophie said grimly. "Slowly over weeks, but they're building up energy. My guess, when we hit day 42, they'll fire, just like they did with the..." "Can you intercept their communications?" Sophie nodded. "I've been trying. The encryption is tough, but I got through on one channel. You need to hear this." She played the recording. Alien voices spoke in a language the translation device rendered as cold and clinical. "Subject humans have survived 30 days. This exceeds projections by significant margin. Observed adaptations, muscle density increase, respiratory efficiency improvement. Social cohesion remains high. They show no signs of collapse. Recommendation: activate sterilization protocols on day 42. These subjects represent Category 5 threat level. Elimination is mandatory." "Agreed. Begin final preparations. Ensure complete destruction. No evidence must remain." Jake felt rage building in his chest. They had been sentenced to death not for what they did, but for what they might become, for being too good at surviving. "Can we stop them?" he asked Sophie. "Not from here," she replied. "The platforms are in orbit. We're on the ground. We'd need something that can reach space or disable the platforms from down here." Ben's voice came from behind them. "Or we could activate whatever's in that facility." They turned. The engineer looked exhausted but excited. We got power running. Took 3 days, but the ancient systems are coming online, and Lisa found something in the records. In the underground chamber, holographic displays now glowed with soft blue light. Lisa stood at a console, scrolling through files of information. They had been thorough in their documentation. They discovered what this facility really is, Lisa explained. VII isn't just it's a proving ground built by an ancient species called the progenitors. They created this place millions of years ago as a test for younger species. She pulled up a schematic. The planet has a defense grid built into its crust. It was designed to protect test subjects from external threats. The progenitors wanted to see how species adapted to the planet itself, not to orbital bombardment. "Can we activate it?" asked. "They tried," Lisa said. "They got close, but they ran out of time. The Council killed them on day 42 before they could finish, but they left instructions, detailed instructions." Ben studied the schematic. "This is incredible. The power source is geothermal, tapping into the planet's core. The shield generators are spread across the entire surface. If activated, nothing from orbit could touch us." "How long to activate it?" Jake asked. Ben and Lisa exchanged glances. "For days," Ben said. "Maybe 5. We need to repair connections, restore power flow to dormant systems, and rewrite the activation protocols. They did most of the hard work. We just need to finish it." "We're at day 31, Jake said. "That gives us 10 days before the platforms fire. We can do this." But the work was harder than expected. The ancient systems were damaged by time. Components failed during testing. The team worked around the clock, sleeping in shifts, pushing their adapted bodies to the limit. On day 35, made another discovery during a scouting mission. He found more tunnels leading to other facilities around the planet. The defense grid was vast, but one section worried him. "There's a facility 12 miles north," reported. "Similar to ours, but it's been destroyed, recently destroyed. Something tore through it with incredible force." Went with a team to investigate. What they found was disturbing. The facility had been gutted by energy weapons. Scorch marks covered the walls, and in the debris they found remains, not human, not something else, something that had been alive just weeks ago. "We're not the only ones here," realized. "The Council has ground forces on this planet. They're watching us, and when day 42 comes, they'll attack from the ground while the platforms fire from above." They returned to camp to find Sophie frantically working at her console. "I broke through their main communication channel," she said. "They're planning a full assault. Ground teams will strike at dawn on day 42. The platforms will fire at noon. They're coordinating to ensure complete elimination." Jake gathered his leadership team. Ben, Lisa, Sophie, Maya, and they looked at each other, exhausted and frightened but not defeated. "We have 6 days," Jake said. "Ben, can you finish the defense grid?" "If we work non-stop, yes." "Can we defend against a ground assault?" The former Marine nodded. "If we see them coming and use the terrain, yes. We've gotten good at fighting on this planet, better than them." "Sophie, can you broadcast what we've learned to the entire galaxy?" She smiled grimly. "This communication array is more powerful than anything we built. Once activated, I can send a signal that every ship in 20 sectors will receive. The Council won't be able to hide what they've done." "Then we have a plan," Jake said. "We activate the defense grid, we hold off the ground attack, and we tell the galaxy the truth about what the Council has been doing on VII." "And if we fail?" someone asked. Day 40 began with dark clouds gathering over VII. The atmospheric sensors showed a massive storm system moving in, the kind that had destroyed previous attempts at colonization. But the humans had learned to read the planet's weather patterns. They had 48 hours before it hit. In the underground facility, Ben's team worked through the night. Sweat dripped from their faces in the humid air as they connected the final power relays. The defense grid was 90% operational. They just needed more time. "How's it looking?" Jake asked, climbing down into the command chamber. He had barely slept in 3 days, none of them had. Ben pointed to a holographic display showing the planet. Blue lines connected points all across the surface, forming a web of energy. Most of the lines glowed steady. A few flickered or remained dark. "The main shield generators are online," Ben explained. "But the northern section has 3 nodes that won't activate. Something's blocking the power flow. Without them, the shield will have gaps. The orbital platforms could shoot through. Can we fix it? Not from here. Someone needs to go to those locations and repair them manually. But Jake, they're each 20 miles away through hostile territory, and we're running out of time. Stepped forward. I'll take teams to each site. We move fast, fix what needs fixing, and get back. The storm, Lisa warned. Moving through the jungle during that storm is suicide. Staying here and letting those platforms fire is also suicide, countered. At least this way we have a chance. Jake nodded. Take your best people, move out within the hour. While organized her repair teams, Sophie worked in the communication center with equipment cobbled together from technology and human ingenuity. The broadcast system was ready. She had compiled all the evidence they had found. The records, the intercepted council communications, the proof of dozens of species sent to VII over centuries, all to be tested and eliminated. When do I transmit? Sophie asked. When the shield is fully active, Jake said. Once we're protected, we tell the galaxy everything. The council can't silence us if they can't kill us. Torres stood on the camp walls, looking out at the jungle. His security teams had been drilling for 48 hours straight. They had positioned fighters at every approach to the camp. Traps had been set in the jungle. Weapons were ready. If the council's ground forces wanted a fight, the humans would give them one. Movement in the eastern sector, a lookout called down. Raised his binoculars. Through the dense foliage, he saw shapes moving with purpose, not the random patterns of native predators. These moved in formation, military formation. Here they come, said quietly. 2 days early, they're not waiting for day 42. Jake received the news and made a quick decision. Your teams leave now. We'll hold them here, fall back to defensive positions. Don't engage unless they attack first. The shapes in the jungle resolved into clearer forms as they approached. Soldiers wearing powered armor from 3 different species, with their 4 arms and heavy weapons. Warriors with thick hides and energy shields. And commandos, known across the galaxy as the finest soldiers money could hire. They stopped just outside the human camp. One of the commanders activated a speaker that boomed across the clearing. Humans of VII, you are ordered to surrender. The Galactic Council has determined you pose a threat to civilized space. Lay down your weapons and you will be granted quick deaths. Resist and you will suffer. Looked at Jake. The captain stood on the wall where everyone could see him. He thought about everything they had survived. The first night when creatures nearly overran them. The hunger and the fear, the adaptation and the growth, the discovery of the truth. We're not surrendering, Jake called back. Tell your council they made a mistake sending us here. They thought this planet would kill us. Instead, it made us stronger. The commander tilted his head. You are 300 primitives with crude weapons. We are 200 trained soldiers with advanced technology. This is not a negotiation. Then it's a fight, Jake replied. And this primitive planet is our home now. You're the invaders. The commander gave a signal. The soldiers advanced. People had been preparing for this. As the first line of soldiers entered the kill zone, the jungle came alive with human traps. Net launchers fired from hidden positions, entangling soldiers in cables. Pit traps opened under heavy footsteps. Sharpened stakes, positioned at angles only humans who understood the jungle could navigate, caught soldiers off guard. But the council forces were professional. They adapted quickly, using their shields and armor to push through the traps. Energy weapons fired into the human positions. Fall back to secondary positions, ordered. The humans retreated in organized groups, using the terrain they had studied for 6 weeks. They knew every tree, every rock, every path through this jungle. The council soldiers were walking into human territory now. A squad pursued one group of humans into a narrow ravine. The humans scattered up the sides, climbing with the agility that high-gravity training had given them. When the followed, unable to climb as quickly in their heavy armor, humans above dropped rocks and logs down on them. Another squad ran into a clearing where Ben had installed one of his inventions, a device that released the chemical smell of a specific predator. Within seconds, the local creatures swarmed the area. They found themselves fighting not just humans, but the planet itself. In the underground facility, Lisa monitored the defense grid while Ben's team worked on the final connections. The northern shield nodes were still offline. Everything depended on repair teams reaching those locations. Led her team through the jungle at a pace that would have been impossible 6 weeks ago. They moved through terrain that would kill untrained soldiers, jumping over toxic plants, dodging predators, using the heavy gravity to launch themselves over obstacles. They reached the first shield node in 3 hours. The facility was smaller than the main command center, just a single chamber with power equipment. Drake, a pilot who had joined team, assessed the damage. "Power coupling is fried," reported. "I can bypass it, but I need 20 minutes. "You have 10, said, watching the sky. The storm was closer than expected. Worked with speed born from desperation. His hands moved through the alien technology with the confidence of someone who had spent weeks studying progenitor systems. At 9 minutes, he connected the final bypass. The shield node hummed to life, its energy signature visible as a faint shimmer in the air around the facility. "1 down, 2 to go, said. At the main camp, the battle intensified. The Council's soldiers had pushed through the outer defenses and reached the camp walls. Energy weapons the metal barriers. Humans fired back with salvaged weapons and clever improvisation. Maya had turned her agricultural knowledge into chemical weapons. She threw containers of concentrated plant toxins that burst on impact, creating clouds that human masks filtered but alien respirators could not. Soldiers choked and fell back. Fought on the eastern wall where the attack was heaviest. A warrior, standing 9 feet tall with natural armor plating, climbed over the wall, met it with a weapon forged from predator bones and pod metal. The weapon shattered against this armor, but rolled under its swing and drove a sharpened stake into the joint where armor met flesh. The roared and fell, grabbed its energy weapon and turned it on 2 more soldiers climbing the wall. "We're holding," he shouted to Jake, "but we can't hold forever." Jake checked the communication from Ben. "Shield status." 70% and rising, Ben replied. "But those northern nodes need to come online or we have gaps." Second team reached the middle shield node. This one was more damaged. Mitchell, who led this group, looked at the fried equipment and cursed. "This will take an hour to fix," said. "We don't have an hour," one of his team members replied, pointing at the sky. The storm was nearly on top of them. Lightning arced between clouds. The wind was picking up. "Then we work in the storm," said. "Let's move." They worked as the first rain began to fall. The storm on VII was unlike any Earth storm. The rain was acidic, hissing where it touched metal. The wind was strong enough to throw a person in Earth gravity. Here, with gravity 2.3 times normal, it pressed them down but also gave them stability. Team secured themselves with cables and worked through the storm. Their masks protected them from the rain. Their adapted bodies handled the pressure. They were humans of VII now, capable of surviving what would kill others. The second node activated after 53 minutes. Back at the main camp, Sophie received a communication that made her pale. "Captain, the orbital platforms are charging faster than expected. They're going to fire within 6 hours, not tomorrow." Jake looked at the battle around him. Fires burned where energy weapons had struck. Humans rushed to wounded friends. The Council soldiers were regrouping for another push. And somewhere out in the storms, teams were racing against time. "Ben, how long until we can activate the full shield?" "1 more node, just 1 more. Give me the 3rd node and I can bring the whole system online." Team pushed through the storm to reach the final shield node. They were exhausted, battered by wind and rain, but they didn't stop. The facility appeared through the storm like a ghost, half buried in mud and debris. "This one's in bad shape," said, looking at the damaged equipment. "Looks like something deliberately sabotaged it." They found evidence of recent activity. Scorch marks from energy weapons, footprints from Council soldiers. The Council had found these facilities and tried to destroy them to prevent any survivors from using the defense grid. "Can we fix it?" asked who had come with her team. Examined the damage and shook his head. "Not with what we have. The main power conduit is destroyed. We'd need to replace the entire assembly." "Then we improvise," said. "That's what humans do." They worked with desperate creativity, rerouted power through secondary systems, manually connected circuits that should have been linked automatically. They took components from their own equipment, sacrificing their communication devices and tools. The wind howled around them. Lightning struck close enough to make their hair stand up, but they didn't stop. "Try it now," shouted over the storm. Activated the connection. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the facility hummed to life. Energy flowed through systems that had been dark for. The third shield node came online. In the command chamber, Ben watched as the final node appeared on his display. That's it. All nodes active, initiating full shield activation. He pressed the sequence they had discovered. Around the planet, buried generators awoke. Energy fields connected and merged, forming a protective barrier that extended from the surface into orbit. In space, the weapons platforms detected the shield and attempted to fire early. Energy lances shot toward the planet, enough power to crack continents and boil oceans. The shield caught them. Ancient progenitor technology met modern council weapons and proved superior. The energy dissipated across the shield like water on glass. On the ground, humans looked up as the sky briefly glowed with blocked destruction. Then the glow faded. They were safe. Sophie activated the broadcast. "This is Sophie of the human colony on VII. We're transmitting to all ships in range. The Galactic Council has been using this planet to eliminate species they consider threats. We have proof of dozens of genocides spanning centuries. We're uploading all evidence now." The data burst into space, spreading to communication networks across multiple sectors. Ships received it. Stations recorded it. Within hours, billions of beings across the galaxy would know the truth. In the camp, the Council's soldiers received orders to retreat. Without orbital support and facing opponents who knew the terrain, their attack had failed. They fell back to their ships, leaving behind equipment and wounded. "Let them go, don't pursue," he ordered. "Let them run, let them report what happened here." Jake stood on the wall as the storm began to clear. Around him, exhausted humans celebrated. They had survived the attack. They had activated the shield. They had exposed the Council's crimes. Ben emerged from the command center. "The shield is stable. It'll hold for years if the transmission spread across the galaxy like a fire in dry grass." Sophie's broadcast reached communication hubs in 12 sectors within the first hour. By the end of the day, hundreds of worlds had received the evidence, the records, the intercepted Council communications, proof of systematic elimination of species deemed too threatening to live. In the Galactic Council chambers, panic set in. "This is a disaster," one Council member hissed. "Centuries of careful policy exposed by primitives who should have died in the first week." "The evaluation committee acted without our knowledge," another protested. "We are not responsible for their crimes." But the galaxy wasn't interested in excuses. Species who had lost colony ships to unexplained disasters now demanded answers. Families who had mourned loved ones on distant planets wanted justice. The Council's authority, built on the appearance of benevolent order, cracked under the weight of revealed truth. On VII, the humans watched this unfold through Sophie's communication equipment. Messages poured in from across the galaxy. Some offered support. Others demanded more information. A few threatened violence against any Council representatives they could find. "We started something big," Sophie said, scrolling through the incoming communications. "The galaxy is tearing itself apart over this." Jake felt the weight of that responsibility. They had exposed the truth to survive, but the consequences rippled far beyond their small colony. "We did the right thing," said firmly. "Those species deserve to know what happened to their people. We deserve to know why we were sent here." Lisa was less certain. "The Council maintained order for thousands of years. What if we just destroyed the only thing keeping the galaxy stable?" "Stability built on lies isn't worth having," Jake replied. "Better chaos and truth than peaceful ignorance." 3 days after the shield activation, a fleet arrived at VII. Not the Council's military ships, but vessels from 24 different species. They entered orbit cautiously, clearly uncertain what to expect from the planet that had elimination. Sophie received a transmission. "Human colony, this is Captain of the Alliance of Free Worlds. We request permission to send a delegation to your surface." Jake consulted with his leadership team. The name Alliance of Free Worlds was new to them. Lisa searched the records and found references to a coalition of species who had long questioned Council authority but lacked the power to challenge it openly. "They might be genuine allies," Lisa said, "or they might want to use us for their own political goals." "Only one way to find out," Jake said. He had Sophie send the response. "Permission granted. Land at the coordinates we provide. Come armed if you want, but know that this planet doesn't treat visitors kindly." The delegation landed in 3 small ships. They emerged wearing environmental suits rated for hostile environments. Leading them was Captain, a tall humanoid with blue skin and 4 eyes. Behind him came representatives from species Jake didn't recognize. They met in the camp's central area. The delegates looked around at the fortified walls, the organized shelters, the humans moving with confident purpose through their colony. This wasn't the desperate settlement of doomed exiles. This was a functional community. "You've done the impossible," said without preamble. "Survived a Class-0, activated ancient progenitor technology, exposed the Council's darkest secret, and now you sit here behind a shield that our best analysts say could withstand a full military assault for decades." "We did what we had to do to survive," Jake replied. "You did more than survive. You changed the galaxy," gestured to the other delegates. "Species across 100 systems are calling for the Council to be dissolved. Others demand reform. Some want trials for those responsible for the elimination programs. The political situation is volatile." "What do you want from us?" asked, her military training making her suspicious of political talk. "Alliance," said simply. "The free worlds have waited centuries for something to break the Council's grip on power. You've given us that, but we need you. A symbol, proof that challenging the Council is possible." "We're not soldiers in your political war," Jake said. "We're colonists who want to build a life here." "And you can," assured him. "We're not asking you to fight. We're asking you to exist. Let the galaxy see humans thriving where the Council sent you to die. Let your survival be the message that the old order is ending." Spoke up from where he stood at the edge of the gathering. "What happens if the Council decides to try again? Bigger weapons, more soldiers. Can your alliance protect us?" Nodded to one of his delegates, a mantis-like creature with compound eyes. The creature spoke in clicks that the translation device rendered as precise and technical. "The shield you activated is remarkable," it said. "The progenitor technology is more advanced than anything the current Council possesses, but more importantly, destroying you now would be politically impossible. The galaxy is watching. Any attack on VII would unite every Council opponent against them." "Politics," muttered. "Never thought I'd be grateful for politicians." Over the next week, more ships arrived. Scientists wanted to study the progenitor facilities. Historians sought access to the records. Species who had lost colonies to the elimination program came to see where their people had died. VII, once a forgotten death trap, became the most watched planet in the galaxy. The humans adapted to their new role. Ben gave tour of the ancient facilities to researchers. Lisa shared her findings about surviving on a Class-0 world. Maya's agricultural techniques attracted specialists interested in hostile environment farming. Even the children became minor celebrities as news programs showed humans who had grown up in the highest gravity environment any species currently inhabited. But not all the attention was positive. The Council, desperate to maintain control, launched a propaganda campaign. They claimed the humans had evidence. They suggested the progenitor shield was a threat to galactic security. They painted humanity as aggressive barbarians who had stumbled onto dangerous technology they didn't understand. Some species believed them. Tensions rose. The alliance of free worlds hardened into a coalition opposed to Council authority. The galaxy split into factions. Small conflicts erupted in disputed territories. Jake watched this from VII and felt guilty. They had wanted justice and exposure of truth. But maybe Lisa had been right. Maybe they had broken something that couldn't be fixed. Then a message came that changed his perspective. Sophie brought it to Jake personally, her face showing a mix of emotions. "It's from the home world, the merchant who started this whole mess, the one whose dispute got us exiled." Jake remembered the name, the merchant who had cheated human colonists and called it an act of war when they protested. The reason 300 humans had been sentenced to death. "What does he want?" Jake asked bitterly. "To apologize," Sophie said quietly. "He says he's watched what happened to you, how you survived, what you exposed. He says he didn't know the Council would exile you to a death world. He thought you'd just be fined or relocated. He's been advocating for human rights in space. He says your survival taught him that strength isn't about power, it's about refusing to give up." Jake read the message himself. The merchant had sent a substantial donation of supplies. Food, tools, medical equipment. Things the colony could use. But more than that, he had become an advocate for reforming the Council's justice system. One person changed by what happened on VII. More messages came in the following days. A warrior who had fought against the humans during the ground assault wrote that their tactics had impressed him. He was now training his own people to be more adaptable. A scientist from a species that had lost a colony 200 years ago thanked them for giving her answers about what happened to her ancestors. People were changing their minds, one message at a time, one perspective shift at a time. Jake realized that exposing the truth hadn't destroyed the galaxy. It had given the galaxy a chance to grow. 6 months after the shield activation, an official council delegation arrived. Not soldiers or political representatives, but the council speaker itself, the being who had sentenced humanity to exile. The speaker came alone, without guards or weapons. It landed its small ship in the colony and walked to meet Jake with slow, deliberate movements of its 6 tentacled arms. "Captain," it said, "I come to offer formal apology on behalf of the Galactic Council." Jake studied the alien. It looked older than he remembered, more tired. "An apology doesn't bring back the people who died in your test." "No," the speaker agreed. "Nothing can, but I can offer truth. The Council has voted to dissolve the Evaluation Committee. The elimination programs have ended. The orbital weapons have been dismantled, and VII is officially recognized as human sovereign territory." "Why?" Jake asked. "Why the change?" "Because you proved our entire philosophy wrong," the speaker replied. "We believed that dangerous species needed to be controlled or eliminated, that survival on VII indicated a threat to galactic order. But you showed us something different. You showed us that the qualities that make a species dangerous, aggression and persistence and refusal to accept defeat, are the same qualities that make a species valuable." The speaker gestured around the colony. "You didn't conquer this world, you adapted to it. You didn't destroy the Council. You exposed truth and let others decide. You were given every reason to become the monsters we feared, but instead you became better." Jake thought about the 42 days of hell, the people they had lost, the fear and pain and desperate struggle, all of it because the Council had been afraid. "I can't forgive you," Jake said. "Not for sending us here, not for all the species you eliminated before us." "I don't ask forgiveness," the speaker replied. "I ask for a chance. Help us build something better, a council that doesn't rule through fear, a galaxy where being strong doesn't make you a target." Appeared at Jake's side. "That's a big ask for people you tried to kill." "It is," the speaker agreed. "But you've already done the impossible. Perhaps you can do it again." Jake looked at his people, humans who had arrived as desperate prisoners and become confident survivors, children playing in the high gravity like it was normal, scientists and engineers working with alien technology, farmers growing Earth crops on a planet that should kill them. They had turned a death sentence into a home. Maybe they could help turn a broken galaxy into something better. "We'll participate," Jake said finally. "Not as subjects, as equals. Humanity gets a seat at the council table, full voting rights, and VII remains ours." "Agreed," the speaker said. "Though I must warn you, serving on the council is often more frustrating than surviving." Jake smiled. "We've gotten good at impossible challenges." 1 year after landing on VII, Jake stood before the reformed Galactic Council as Earth's first ambassador. The chamber was the same, but the atmosphere had changed. Where once species competed for dominance, now they debated as equals. The alliance of free worlds had been integrated into the council structure. New rules prevented any single faction from having absolute power. Jake spoke about humanity's journey, from exiles to survivors to advocates. He talked about the lessons learned on VII, that adaptation beats strength, that community beats isolation, that truth, however painful, beats comfortable lies. "We were sent to die quietly," Jake concluded. "We chose to live loudly, and in living, we learned that survival isn't about never falling down, it's about always getting back up." The council chamber erupted in approval from species who understood struggle. Not everyone agreed. Some still saw humanity as dangerous, but they couldn't deny the results. Back on VII, the colony thrived. New settlers arrived from Earth, eager to prove themselves on humanity's famous. The progenitor facilities became a research center where species came to study ancient technology. The planet's reputation shifted from death trap to proving ground. Ben stood in the command chamber, now expanded and modernized. He worked with scientists from 12 species to understand progenitor technology. The shield remained active, a symbol of humanity's refusal to die. Lisa led expeditions into the unexplored regions of VII. They had barely scratched the surface of the planet. Who knew what other secrets it held? Trained security forces for multiple species in high-gravity combat. Turns out surviving a Class-0 made you a sought-after instructor. Maya's agricultural techniques were being adopted on harsh colonies across the galaxy. Earth crops grew in places they had no right to grow, tended by people who learned from humanity's example. Sophie maintained the communication network that kept the galaxy connected. Her broadcast had started a revolution. Now she worked to keep the conversation going. Became humanity's military liaison, teaching other species that strength came in many forms. Not just firepower, but strategy, adaptation, and stubborn determination. And on a stone near the river, where they had found bones and a warning message, the humans added their own message. They carved it deep so it would last for a message for anyone who might be sent to VII in the future. They sent us here to die. We chose to build a home. If you're reading this, you can too. Never give up, never surrender, survive loudly. Years later, when historians studied the fall of the old Galactic Council and the rise of the New Order, they would point to VII as the turning point, the moment when everything changed. But for Jake, standing on the walls of New Hope Colony, as the sun set over that had become humanity's greatest achievement, the lesson was simpler. They had expected humans to die quietly. Humanity had refused. And in that refusal, they had changed the galaxy forever. Teams returned, battered but alive, collapsed on the ground, too tired to stand. "We did it," Jake said quietly, then louder so everyone could hear. "We did it." The humans cheered. They had been sent to die but chose to live. They had been tested and passed. They had been sentenced but won their freedom. Above them, the shield hummed with quiet power, a monument to human stubbornness built from ancient technology and desperate hope. The test was over. Humanity had its answer. Jake looked around at the faces of people who had survived 36 days on the most dangerous planet in the galaxy. People who had adapted and grown stronger. People who had taken a death sentence and turned it into a home. "We won't fail," Jake said, "because we're human and humans don't know how to quit." In orbit, the weapons platforms completed another phase of their charge sequence. In 6 days, they would fire. The evaluation committee was confident. They had eliminated dozens of species this way. Humans would be no different. But below, in the ancient facility built by beings long dead, human hands worked to prove them wrong. They repaired circuits and rewrote code. They connected power systems and tested shield generators. And in the jungle around them, the predators of VII had learned something the Council hadn't. They had learned that humans were the most dangerous creatures on the planet. The test was about to have an ending no one expected. Hidden beneath the rocks where they had found the human bones and the warning message, discovered an opening. Not a natural cave, but something built with purpose. Metal edges lined a tunnel leading down into darkness. "Captain needs to see this," said quietly. As the others went to fetch Jake, stared into the tunnel. Something was down there, something old, something that might hold answers to questions they hadn't even thought to ask yet. Why had the Council really sent them to VII? And who had left that warning message in stone? He saw determination. He saw adaptability. He saw humans who refused to die quietly. They had just met Earth's children, and Earth's children weren't prey. They were survivors.